Hi guys, welcome back to the weird side of YouTube. I'm your host, author DC Knife, and this is the Writing Rainbow, the show where I talk about writing from movies, like scripts, television shows, video game stories, books, obviously, and my writing and writing advice. Today we are doing more writing advice because it seems to be the one that we can agree on. You guys like the most, and I like making the most. And this is one of my favorite subjects today, which is world building. Welcome to World Building 101. All right, I have a list of things to talk about here. Number one is maps. Maps, maps, maps. Everybody who reads fantasy novels loves maps. Maps, maps, maps. That bitch like maps, so I gave that bitch a map. You need to do every area in your main world. You need to figure out if there's going to be separate countries, and you need to also have maps for each of those. And you also have to have a world map. Now, this could be, like if you're doing a high fantasy novel, something cute for the readers to have, like when they open the fantasy book. I know Tolkien does that a lot. A few other authors do. I make my own maps for my own stories, no matter what they are. I even had a work in progress about, it was a very, almost like comedic romance that took place in a department store, and it was about people that worked there for seasonal jobs for like during the holidays. And I had a map of the store. That I don't have that anymore. It was on my old laptop, but I still have the writing, and I still go back and look at it sometimes. I'm not sure if we'll ever finish it, but the point is, I make maps for all of my stuff, not even fantasy stuff. So it doesn't have to be anything that the public sees if you're trying to sell your work. You can just do it for fun and let yourself get to know your world more easily. Now, these are some examples of maps that I have made. One is for my remake of my novel Dream, which should be coming later this year. Another is for a scrapped fantasy novel I had been working on a few years back. As you can tell, they are both very different. But because I worked on them like decades apart. As you can see, I have every area labeled. I also have the ocean labeled on my Halcyon one, and the cosmos, which is also an area that they explore for a minute. But every area, this is what I'm saying. It's just as much as for the writer as it is for the reader, because you want what you're writing to make sense. Like, they went down the road to this area, or they journeyed across the country to the realm of the fairies, or they went to the satyr village through the woods. But if your directions in different parts of your book don't match up, the readers are going to be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You know, it's kind of annoying because it's one of those things where, like, someone left a coffee cup in the middle of the Game of Thrones season finale. But you know, it's just one of those things where your favorite writer does a fuck up, and it's kind of annoying, and you're sitting there like, I could be an editor. I gotta fix this. I gotta fix this. I see so many spelling mistakes in all these Stephen King books. I gotta fix this. No. Literally everything you do as a writer, you have to look at from the point of view as a reader, and that includes the layout of your lands. It includes the countries where everything is, your locations, directions of how to get to certain places, because if you say that you go somewhere else, or if something looks different than how you described it in the previous chapter, and the seasons have not changed, and nothing has gone on, no, it's just going to look like shitty writing. It's going to look like you do not care. And we don't want that. No, because we do care. We care too much. And some people might say we need to go to therapy, but that's none of their business. Consistency is key at the end of the day, and maps help with that. That's just a big thing for fantasy writers. And also, if you're not writing fantasy, just make one for fun, like I did with my my writing in progress of seasonals. Actually, I kind of want to write that again. Next is politics. I know, the dirty word, the dirtiest of all words. What most of us readers and fantasy fans delve into our worlds to escape from. However, worlds need politics, and even the absence of politics is political, as we all know. Now, we are not just talking about conservative versus liberal, your hippie, freaky art chick of a cousin versus your racist asshole of an uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. We are talking about hard fucking core medieval shit. Fantasy or not, the medieval times were atrocious for everyone involved, but especially women, gay people, queer people in general, people of other races, non-Christians, and the like. But if you twist that all around, mix it up with some fantasy shit, you can either have Game of Thrones, which is very blatant in its sexual assault of women and torture and murder of queer people, or you could have something akin to Tolkien, where all the homosexuality is in subtext, because I have a theory he was a closeted homosexual man, and don't get offended by that, just theory. All the racism is in subtext as well, because we all know the orcs were supposed to be black people. You're not fooling anyone. Which is really fucked up. Can't help it that it's one of my favorite works, though. But I am so sick and tired of the perfect, pristine white elf versus the dark-skinned orc, and their only evil. The southern warrior tribes from the south are clearly African, and they are like warlords, and they only exist to be evil and help other evil people. It's just kind of shit. Man, why would you do that? Like, sure, black people can be evil. The entire tribes, all of the tribes in the southern African-based place are evil, and they only exist for war. They're barbarians. Okay, that's just fucked. So, politics. Even when you think there's no politics, like in Lord of the Rings, it's still incredibly political if you read it through an adult's mindset. So, that leaves you with a couple choices. Are you going to lean heavily into the politics, like I choose to? Because if I'm not helping the world through my art, then what's really the point of it? And I don't like people that are like, you're just supposed to be entertaining. No, you're not. That's not the point of storytelling historically. Grow up. If you want a storytelling, sit down and watch Dora the Explorer. You can either lean into the politics, like I said, try to make something good out of it, deal with topics like queer issues, misogyny, sexual assault, racism, with a hopeful and clear mindset and an intention of shedding light on these situations rather than glorifying them, or go the way of Game of Thrones and glorify them. Either way, that's another issue why I don't like the dark fantasy genre, even though I write in it, is because a lot of basic bro dude authors think that I think honestly they just write in it just so they can write about their weird rape fantasies and murdering queer people and people of color. It's fucking weird, man. Fucking weird. Also, when you're writing about your politics in your kingdom and or tribe and or village, whatever have you in your fantasy world, are these politics persuaded by religion? Does religion control these politics? Is the church behind it all? Speaking of, that brings us to the next topic, is religion. The big thing I need fantasy authors to stop doing. If gods exist, that's fine. I see so many fantasy novelists being like, if their gods exist and they're proven, there cannot be atheists in your world. That doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. It absolutely does, because let me tell you, if the Christian God existed, I would be spitting in his face. there would be people that were against the gods in a fantasy setting, especially if those gods are assholes. So, do gods exist? Are those gods good or evil? And are there atheists? And obviously, if the gods exist, the term atheism doesn't necessarily mean someone that doesn't believe in the god, because the god is real. It's just a person that stands against said gods or god. That's basically all it is. However, there's lots of little tidbits under here, like is there temples, nuns, priests, high priestesses, followers of this god, cults. There's so many details you can put just under religion that it's hard to list them all out. Even things like you may not even think of, like traditions or religious holidays. There may be a religious holiday in the summer in your book, but the book actually takes place in the winter. Do you have to mention it at all? No. But making one up just for the sake of world building and getting to know your world that you birthed is worth it. Make holidays, make traditions, make traditional religious garb. It's all just fun. Why not? Next is cultures. Are they? Culture is a very interesting topic because culture does what? Culture evolves. Culture changes. Culture adds. Especially in a place like America. My favorite kind of kingdom to write about is the melting pot kingdom, where a bunch of cultures came together to stop one giant evil back in the past. And they founded a kingdom, and based on love and mutual respect for each of their cultures. Now, each people in said kingdom all have their own specific culture that's personal to their peoples. But they also have one big overarching culture of their kingdom, like, which consists of like holidays and traditions that everyone created. So even if you have like a character that's an elf that now lives in a big city of humans, just because he is experiencing the human culture doesn't mean he has been abandoned or cut off from his elven culture, because that is intrinsically something that is part of a human, person in general. But when it comes to different cultures, you can go the traditional way of dwarves being based on Scottish, elves being loosely based on Norse. You can go that route. I have my own little go-to thing. I like my merfolk being Greek. I don't know why, I just do. And I like my elves being Celtic, and satyrs too, for some reason, even though satyrs are Greek. But that's just what I see them as. And my fairies being British, which is traditionally modern, I guess, which is annoying. But you get what I'm saying. Whatever feels right to you, whatever feels right in your world, you absolutely can base a fantasy creature culture on a real world culture. You just need to be careful of using stereotypes or anything that may be harmful to that culture. You need to appreciate, not appropriate. You need to do a lot of research. You can't just be like, oh, this fairy is black, so she likes to play the drums, and she likes to be a rapper, and she's also a lesbian, so she dresses in overalls and drives a truck. Obviously, I'm joking. You can't do that. You have to do research. If you're not a part of this culture that you're trying to emulate and bring up to the light and kind of celebrate in a way, because that's what you're doing. If you're bringing a culture, a real world culture, you need to love that culture and respect it enough to treat it right, if you get what I'm saying. Don't use negative stereotypes. Basically, don't make the African warlords only exist to be evil. Tolkien. That's all I'm saying, man. That's all I'm saying. I still can't believe that. Next, speaking of racism, races. Races. Are there humans? If so, what specific races of human? Black, white, Japanese, Indian, Native American? Are there dwarves, elves, orcs, fae, merfolk, fantasy stuff? Animan, which is what I call humans with animal-like qualities, like bear ears and a bear tail, like Theodore has. You also have to keep in mind that just because someone is an elf doesn't necessarily mean that they are white. Just because someone is an orc doesn't necessarily mean that they're dark-skinned. Just because someone is a fae doesn't necessarily mean they're female. You know what I mean? We need to branch out more in fantasy is what I'm saying. I'm tired of seeing the same old white elf versus black orc narrative because that's tired and it's kind of racist. Also, nationality, culture, race. 3 different things. So, say I'm an elf. My ears are removable, but I'm an elf. I live in Orkenheimer, where orcs are from. I was born in Orkenheimer because my mother and father were orcs, and they adopted me. But I am purple-skinned. I'm a purple elf adopted by orcs in Orkenheimer. My culture is orcish because I was raised in an orcish family. However, should I choose to go back and find my roots, which I probably would, I would get in touch with my elven roots and elvish culture. Get what I'm saying? Very different things. Race, culture, nationality. Different. Very, very different. Different things. Anyway, history. We have to have a firm foundation of history for every fantasy book if you're going to sit down and write one. Were there wars? Were there nations that were enemies? Political intrigue? Were there legendary items and or MacGuffins spoken about in this history? Are there historical figures in this history, like heroes or villains, someone that maybe sacrificed themselves to stop a great calamity? Or, we have to have a firm foundation. However, this can get tricky, because if you have too much of a prologue, you don't have a story, you have a prequel. If all of your stuff happens in the back end, if most of the story happens before your present day of your story, you don't have a story. You have a prequel. So maybe make a prequel before you make the story. Next is explore, and this is the funnest part. I don't know if everyone can do this, but I certainly can. Explore your world inside your head. Use your imagination. Role play. It's just make a self-insert character with little mini stories in this world for you to go on just yourself and have fun. This is one of the funnest things you can do as a writer. You don't have to. I know a lot of people do not like self-insert characters, and I understand why. I don't put self-insert characters in my writing as an adult. I did as a kid. However, that does not mean you can't do that just for funsies, and maybe release it down the line as a short story or two or something special for YouTube, which I might eventually. But my self-insert character stories take place on my computer, in my head. No one's seen them. But it's literally just for me to go around and explore and understand my fantasy world more fully. I can see it in my head taking shape like a pop-up book. This is probably the biggest advice that I can give you personally that I do. Write a self-insert character mini story, short story. Maybe just a couple chapters, maybe a short story. Does not matter. This is just for practice. This is just for fun. This is what this world is going to look like to you. You are exploring it, you are talking to the characters, you are not necessarily character development because you're getting in your own story there, details, but just explore. Explore, look at the scenery, talk to the characters. This is also a good way to get to know your characters as well by self-inserting them yourself into a conversation with these characters. Hearing a conversation with them. What would they do if I gave them this gift? How would they react if I insulted their mother? Just that kind of fun thing. It's so much fun just to put a self-insert character in a practice writing session. And I've done that since I was a kid. That is the biggest, and best piece of advice I think I can give you for Worldbuilding 101. But that's it for today, you guys. I love you. My website is www.prismaticdreams.com. We are having a giveaway right now. Details in the description. You can also check out my Patreon if you want to support me that way. I also have music available on my Bandcamp. And I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.